I want to talk to you about something really important. Very simple rule, very important. It's this: don't lose money. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Cryptonomics, Principles of Cryptocurrency and Investing. My name's Kurt Robinson. I'm a pretty cool guy, so I've heard. And thank you to all those people who are sharing these videos and podcasts around, pressing like on Facebook, pressing subscribe on YouTube, listening in your favorite podcasting app, and leaving comments on Steam. We always have a great discussion on there. As always, I'm not trying to give anyone financial advice. I don't know your financial position. I'm just describing my own thinking process here. So I want to talk to you about preservation of capital. Don't lose money.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule. And that's all the rules there are.
One idea that is really important: asset allocation. So back in January 2018 and over the subsequent months, a lot of people threw up their hands and say, oops, I guess I was overexposed. I guess I had more exposure to the market than my risk tolerance would allow. So when you lose 50% of an asset, suddenly go, actually, I didn't want to lose that much. And that's why asset allocation is so important. When you have a small portfolio, like 1 month's wages or 1 week's wages, it can make sense to just bet it all on one thing, to put it on a high risk, high reward asset, especially something where you expect to have asymmetric gains, like with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. That is, something where you expect the gains to far outweigh the risk. With Bitcoin or other cryptos, you can lose 100% of what you put in, but you stand to gain a lot more, so maybe 1,000% or 2,000%. A lot of people have seen those types of gains. If you don't have a lot to lose, it makes more sense to risk what you have. But when you have a larger portfolio, it makes more sense to be conservative. So in that case, maybe you would only be putting 1%, 5% into cryptocurrency because it's so risky. Now, there are many different classes of assets like stocks, bonds, precious metals, alternative investments such as cryptocurrency. Generally, there are two main categories. One is safe category and the other is the growth category. So what some people talk about is this idea that put your age as a percentage and then you put that much in safe assets. So for example, if you're 25 years old, you take 25% of your assets and put them into bonds. The remaining 75% will be in growth assets. Other people have a different idea, which is because stocks and other growth assets, crypto, so volatile, you're only going to want a small percentage of your portfolio in them. So for example, you might have 70% of your portfolio in bonds and precious metals and 30% of your portfolio in crypto and stocks. Another way to look at it is from Nassim Taleb. So Nassim Taleb was one of the only guys who did really well when it came to the dot-com bubble. And his idea is, I want to preserve as much capital as I can, and with a small amount of my wealth, I'm going to make these crazy bets, which maybe they pay off really big. So he put 90% in bonds and precious metals, and the other 10% he would put on these speculative assets like futures and options and other derivatives, things which, if they paid off, could actually increase his entire portfolio by 10 or 20%. Now, I'm not saying you need to follow any one of these guidelines, but the point is, you want to think about this stuff in advance. So when things start to go crazy and everything's working up into a hype cycle, the media's talking about Bitcoin left and right and everybody's spruiking their favorite garbage coin, that's not the time for planning, because that's a time when you're going to be highly emotional and it's much more difficult to think things through clearly. So that's why when there's a bear market, when things are slow and steady, you can think clearly. It's a lot easier to plan ahead. Another way to look at it is, if you imagine all of the money that you have in crypto went to zero today, would you still be happy? All right, you're never going to be happy if that happens, but would you be able to get by just fine if one of your asset classes goes to zero? Now, you hear a lot of people say things like, yeah, I'm diversified. I have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero. Now, that's not real diversification. That's depth in a market. To be really diversified, you have to have breadth across several markets, because the thing is, markets are highly correlated. So when Bitcoin goes up, chances are Ethereum will go up. If you have all of your wealth in one market, you could be in trouble when there's a crash. But if you have some of your wealth in crypto, some of your wealth in precious metals, when one goes up, you can change some of the wealth and put it into the other market. When one goes down, you can take advantage by moving more money into that market. Another really important point is about rebalancing, specifically about when, how frequently to align your assets with the plan that you've set out for your portfolio. So if you want to have 10% in crypto and it doubles, when do you start to sell? Traditionally, people have said stuff like, oh, I balance every year or I rebalance every quarter. But with crypto, because things can move so quick, so rapidly, things can go up, the entire market can go up sometimes 10%, 20% in a day. It's prudent to have extra rules in place to know when to rebalance. For example, if you're watching your entire net worth, you have your little spreadsheet there to take track of your assets, and you realize that it's gone up and exceeded another $10,000 mark or another $50,000 mark, that might be a note for you to start to rebalance, to start to sell some of that Bitcoin and move it into precious metals or stocks. Or maybe you say when Bitcoin reaches above 10,000, that's when you're going to start to sell. The important thing isn't whether you use one particular rule or another. The important thing is to have a rule so you know when you're going to start moving things around and trying to lock up some of those gains or get them in other markets when they're going to be a little safer. A lot of people buy into crypto with the hopes of getting rich. If that is what you want to do, then plan ahead, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. The chances are the cycle is going to come around again with the halvening in 2020, and people are going to start getting involved in a hype cycle. The media is starting to blow it up again. We can reasonably expect that this is going to happen. So be prepared, be conscious. The last thing I want to see with crypto is for this opportunity for the common man to expand his wealth, actually have it squandered, and see all the money go into the hands of bank managers and hedge fund managers. No, I want to see people like you, regular people, getting rich and enjoying their wealth and using it in a way that fulfills them, makes them more content, and that they create more art and beauty and magic in the world. That is my sincere wish for you, so I hope you do it. I hope you plan ahead and make your life cool. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Thanks for everybody who's sharing these videos and commenting on Steemit. We're seeing a great discussion on there, and it's almost always, 90% of the time, is extremely respectful, which is just amazing on social media. Thanks for liking on Facebook and subscribing on YouTube, and thanks for sharing these around and re-steaming them. I'll talk to you next time. As always, stay grateful.